you were born with a tail, I never would have known. Like, it doesn't show at all. Like, you've overcome this really weird thing about you, you know. Hi, this is Sarah from the homeschoolsearch.com, and today I am here with my husband.
Hello.
This is my husband, Micah. And today we thought it would be interesting to talk about the differences in our experiences. Me as a homeschool grad, he was
Public school
all the way, graduated from public school in a small country town, and what the differences are that we've seen in our own lives and now as we homeschool our own children. So, what would you like to tell us about your public school experience, dear?
I think I had a pretty typical public school experience. Yeah. I'm assuming. I don't really know. But I was always very shy, so I kept to myself. I was not really an outgoing social butterfly of any kind at all. But I think I had a typical public school experience. So when I first met you, I was intrigued by what you talked about homeschooling, and it was like I never really thought about homeschooling too much. I had a friend who was homeschooled. Part of his life.
I don't think that's ever.
He was a friend of mine. He went to the same school for a little while. Then he went to a Christian school, and then he was homeschooled for a while. I'm not sure if he went back to private school later on. I don't really remember. We kind of lost touch after a while.
Mm-hmm. There was no Facebook back then.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I was never homeschooled. I only knew one person who was ever homeschooled for a short period of time.
I think that's true for a lot of people like us who were teenagers through the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, yeah, I knew one homeschooler, but they were kind of weird. Or, you know, like you knew that one or maybe two homeschool families. And so you kind of based all of your assumptions about homeschoolers just on that one family. Yeah. And that's really, it's a much more diverse group nowadays, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's still typically a more conservative, often Christian, faith-based group of people, but I'm also seeing that change a lot too. I think we're going to see more and more people from various walks of life come to homeschooling in the years ahead.
Yeah, probably.
I think it's a good fit for a lot of different families and different types of circumstances. So what did you think when I first started talking about homeschooling? Like, think back now to when we were just getting to know each other and we were friends, and then you started being a little bit interested in this odd homeschooled girl. What were your thoughts related to homeschooling? Did you think of me as a homeschooler? I was right out of high school when we met.
True, yeah.
And then we started dating a year later. So I'd say like at 19, I still really kind of thought of myself as a homeschooler, even though I wasn't actually being homeschooled at that time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly talked about it a lot. You told me at one point that looking back that I was kind of what?
A homeschool snob.
I was a homeschool snob.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, because you were kind of the evangelist for homeschooling. It's like, it's good, we're not weird, everything's,
Except we are a little bit
above board.
But we're good with it.
It's a good weird, because I guess there's a certain persona that was presented that was like a little bit false perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got to know you and started actually asking you questions, got to know you personally, I was like, she's really smart and has a lot of wisdom from things that I don't think was really part of my experience in education in general. Just some of the wisdom there that I was like, she has a lot of practical knowledge about stuff that I wasn't really necessarily surprised because you're homeschooled, but it's just surprised in general.
Maybe I wasn't as naive as you thought I would be.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a common assumption people make about homeschoolers.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so sheltered. They must not know about anything, evil in the world or
how the world works. Kind of stuff. I was like, no, she's got some good practical knowledge there, and it's partially because of your family and that kind of thing.
I think that's what, again, just coming back to how unique homeschooling can be. There are homeschoolers out there who basically live under a rock. They have no idea what's going on in the world because that's how their family has chosen to live. Mm-hmm. And whether you agree with that or not, that's their choice, and that's their ability to make that choice. But I don't see many homeschoolers actually making that choice. I think those are the homeschoolers that get the attention as far as people's assumptions. Like, oh, homeschoolers, they never leave their house. And when I was growing up, my friends and I, we would joke about that, sarcastically say, oh, my parents let me out of my room today so I could leave the house. But we were laughing because that was so not how it was. But I I had a lot of strangers make rude comments and assumptions to me over the years growing up, and I think that's why I was a homeschooled snob back then. I definitely was. I had a big chip on my shoulder.
And in defense, really, just defending.
Yes, I was just defensive. I was waiting for. I was kind of like ready for someone to make a comment about it because I knew that they would.
You're ready to give an answer to those who question.
So it was biblical.
Yeah, very, very biblical.
But I'm sure it was rather off-putting for some people too. But I did have a lot of extremely rude comments. I still sometimes get rude comments even as an adult. I had a friend a couple years ago say to me, "Oh my goodness, you were homeschooled? I've never would have guessed you were homeschooled. You're the first normal homeschooler I've ever met." And I was like, "Thank you.
Yeah.
You've just insulted my people."
Yeah.
These are my people. Like, it was like she was saying to me, "You were born with a tail. I never would have known. Like, it doesn't show at all. Like, you've overcome this really weird thing about you, you know, and you've somehow managed to achieve normalcy." And I think that is a lot of times the assumption, because again, people don't know a wide variety of homeschoolers, at least not going back to like our childhood and our teen years. But I think that's changing too. I think our kids hopefully will have less of that stereotype to deal with, and hopefully be able to be less confrontational about homeschooling. I think I've definitely calmed down about homeschooling. I hope I'm not a snob about it anymore.
I think so.
I'm passionate about it, but I also understand that it's just not something everyone's going to choose to do or be able to do, and that's fine. But I think it's a valid choice. It is equally good to any other choice you might be considering for your children. And I think where my attitude came from when I was younger was that it was constantly being seen as a lesser choice, that this was a weird thing to have experienced, and I didn't feel that it was. So going back to your experience as a public schooler, what are some things that you see?
I remember.
What were things you experienced that I didn't experience, or what were you going to say?
I remember when I first got to know you and your family, I was talking to your brother about a lot of things, and he had some interesting interests that were, I think, particular to a homeschooler as far as weightlifting and certain history books and stuff like that. He had such a passion about history with
he loves the history of anything that he's interested in.
Yeah, he would read all these history books and stuff, and I was like, that's really interesting. And it's particular about homeschoolers that if they have passion or interest about something, they just pursue it, and they find out everything they can find out about something. If they're curious about weightlifting, if they're curious about history or whatever specific subject they like, they just go for it and they learn about it, and they become more or less an expert in that category as much as they want to be. And that's kind of a nice thing to hear, because we've watched other YouTube videos about homeschooling, different approaches to things, really coming back to the idea of finding a passion for learning. And that's an interesting thing that I've never really experienced until more recently in life, because I've been forced to be educated in a way. In public school, I was a good student.
Yes.
I did
very smart.
I did well because I was smart enough to do well.
With little effort.
I was gifted in that way. Well, yes, with very little effort. I didn't want to do homework unless I was forced to. Then I would do homework. But because of that, I didn't really have a passion for learning. I didn't really want to learn. I just had to learn because that was forced upon me. Which, that has to be done to some degree. To some degree, you have to learn certain things.
And I think it's valuable to learn to acquire the ability to discipline yourself.
Yeah,
to
definitely.
do things that you don't enjoy. Like,
Yes.
I've seen homeschoolers take it to the other extreme where they're raising kids who don't ever know how to do anything that isn't fun. So there's a small minority of people who take it to that extreme, which I don't personally feel is healthy, but
and there's a balance of personality too. I was a very shy person.
Yes. So
I probably would have had to been forced into most decisions because I would just rather
I think you would have been an excellent homeschooler, though. I could have
Possibly.
seen you really having embraced it because you were a quirky teen. I'm thinking of the 3-piece corduroy suit.
Yeah. In high school, I started branching out and realizing I don't have to be, so shy and such a recluse.
You were still quiet, though.
I was so quiet, but I could dress ridiculous and go to high school and be like, I don't really care what people think of me, and that was a good process to go through. But at the same time, I think it also could apply to learning as well, and learning just, hey, I like this, I like that. Finding your interests and really finding your skills that you've been gifted with personally. I mean, I'm good at math and science for the most part. I'm a little slow at math.
I'm not.
So I like those subjects. But it wasn't until high school that I realized I took a class that they didn't check to see if we'd done any homework. The
Big mistake.
professor did not check homework. I was like, oh, sweet. I don't have to do any homework in this class. Because of that, I almost failed the class. But until then, I really enjoyed math. It was a higher level math. I don't think it was a trigonometry and calculus. But so I liked math and science, but I didn't really push myself because I didn't really have that passion or desire to do it. And no one was really checking up on me as well, which is, accountability is important.
You needed some accountability still.
Accountability is still important, yes, definitely. But also pursuing the things that you want to learn is also a nice thing to be able to do that without being forced to 100%. Some accountability is good, but to be forced to be an expert in all these different categories is just exhausting, I think, to some degree.
And I think that's one of the things where then homeschooling is able to take away some of that burden on children, at least, and it depends on how you homeschool, again, because we're all doing it very differently. But one option, and the option I try to keep in mind with my own children, is I want them, I'm less worried about what grade level the textbook is and more concerned about, have they mastered everything we've covered so far, and are we challenging them at the right pace moving forward? So I would rather my kid be a year behind in math and really have grasped what we've covered so far and continue to challenge them and push them to do the best they can do. But we're all going to reach different levels. Like you took trigonometry, and did you take calculus too? I didn't. I took algebra 1. That was all the further I got in math. And we both still had normal lives and good paying jobs. And I actually ended up working in finance for several years and doing financial audits. So I was able to do that with only algebra 1. But I was able to do that. And sure, that was nothing like I didn't have bragging rights about how well I had done in math. But I also took a lot of literature classes, which is what I ended up majoring in college, and took through my co-op some very challenging literature classes to the point where when I got to college, I was like, this is easy. I've been doing this since 9th grade. This is not 10-page paper. Sure, I can do that this weekend. So I had some strengths, but then I also had some weaknesses, and ultimately we all have that. We're not going to be good at everything. We're going to find our passions, like you said. And I think one thing we've talked about in the past was how in public school you were really forced to be good at everything, and it kind of, for certain personalities, that can really kind of squelch a love of learning, because learning becomes such a burden at that point that you're forced to, like for you absolutely hated writing papers. And
yeah, that's true.
I remember when we were dating in college, and he had a paper to write, which he always put off until like the night before, and I would just like be cringing because I was so afraid he wasn't gonna make it to the finish line, and he would just stay up and cram because he's smart and he could get away with that. But yeah, listening to you like think through writing a paper, and you were like, why do I have to write that down? The professor already knows that. He's the one who taught that. And I'm like, yeah, he wants to know if you know it. So that's why you're putting it in your paper. He's like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
I don't get that. Why am I doing it that way?
Yeah, and if I had had an English professor who was my mom, perhaps.
Oh, my English professor was not my mom. That was one class my mom outsourced.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
That's good.
She had a couple. In high school, we really started outsourcing more classes.
And that was co-op stuff. Yeah. Well, that's nice too. But as far as having just a smaller classroom size and be able to ask those questions and be like,
yes.
And knowing
I had more access to the teacher.
I was struggling, and I just didn't like English class. I mean, I did well, I think, in high school. I was smart enough to get by, but I wish I would have had someone to help me understand why we should do this, and why you helped me understand a lot of that stuff, which is why I completely trust you to homeschool our kids, because you are able to explain those things. And of course, I want to be involved as much as I can as well, even though I work full-time, being able to help with the kids in the evenings, weekends with math or science or that kind of
sometimes
stuff.
Like one of our kids, I swear that he and our one child share the same brain. Like just the way they look at things is the same. So sometimes if she and I are sitting down really struggling, like for me to explain a concept and it's getting to that point where I'm getting really frustrated, I'll just say, okay, we're just going to put it away for now. And when you get home, let's see if Daddy can explain it to you. Because I know he has a way of putting it into words that she understands better than the way I put things into words, just because you guys, you just have a similar perspective, similar personality type. So I think homeschool dads who who aren't home, working from home, a part of the typical homeschool day. I mean, you would be doing some homework with your kids anyway if they were in school. It's not like you get off the hook teaching your kids if you send them to school. You still have to teach your kids. They're going to come home with homework, and you're going to have to try and figure out a way to help them through it one way or another. And homeschooling is really just taking that to the next level. People talk about, oh, that's just too hard, I can never do that. I don't think it's really that much harder, especially in the younger years, than it would be to just help your kid with homework in the evening.
Yeah, and we'll see how it goes as they get older and how things get more complicated.
And there are so many resources. I mean, even when I was homeschooling in the late 90s, I was in high school, there were options even then to outsource certain classes. Like I took a literature class with a lady who is now a published author and like worldwide traveling speaker. So she was very confident to teach our classes. I had science classes, did dissections, which I was not good at all. And
I never even did dissection in high school.
You didn't do dissection in high school?
No.
Did you take biology in high school?
I took biology and took the higher sciences and stuff as well, but I never got any kind of dissection. I think they offered it as like if you want to, we'll set it up outside of class sometime. But I never did do a dissection. So
we did frogs and baby pigs. And I can still remember the smell. It was awful.
I've always wanted to, never got to.
My best friend wanted to be a forensic pathologist, and so we put on the gloves because I was not getting any of this on me at all. It was just the most disgusting thing in my opinion. So she did all of the dissecting, and I wrote up all of the lab work. So
you passed, I guess.
So
right. That's good.
Yeah.
You learned enough to
I made it through college.
Yeah,
and that's something else I think we should both talk about is transitioning from high school to college. What were the strengths and weaknesses coming to college as a public school grad? What were the strengths and weaknesses coming to college as a homeschool grad? What would you...
It depends on personality, of course, too. I'm a more laid-back, relaxed personality, and you're a little more proactive in a way. I'm a little more passive about a lot of things. So I know
we get along so well. We're well balanced.
Yeah, I think so. But I know for me in college, I was already just tired of school. I didn't really want to do college, so I still don't know what I wanted to do with my life, of course.
You changed your major a couple times.
Changed my major a couple times, kind of just played around, goofed off for the first couple of years. I stopped after 2 years of college and just took a break and joined the ministry team, met you. And so
a good decision.
That was a very good decision. But I was really floundering because I didn't know what I was good at, really. I knew I liked messing with computers and stuff like that.
I think you'd also convinced yourself you weren't really good at anything.
I think, yeah, pretty much. I was like,
I don't know when that came into play because you always had done really well in school, but somewhere along the way you decided you just weren't good at anything.
I just couldn't really figure out which direction to go in. I've been told by many people, yeah, you can do whatever you want to do. That is way too many options for me.
Yeah, it is overwhelming to think about. And the whole time you're in your late teens and early 20s, just the whole, what am I going to do with my life? How am I going to do adulthood? It's just a really overwhelming question.
Yeah, and knowing your limitations and knowing your skills and abilities is really important. And I think that's one of the things that you can, as a homeschool, focus on because you have the smaller class size in a way, the one-on-one interaction and some feedback from someone who cares about you, your parents, who say, hey, you're good at this, you're good at that, let's focus on this, let me help you with that kind of stuff. And I think that could have been really helpful to me. I don't know. You
brought home report cards that had good grades across all subjects.
Yeah.
There wasn't like, well, hey, you're not really as strong in this area. So like for me, it was obvious to my parents because they were right there seeing what I was doing every day that I was not great at math and science. This was just not something I had an interest in, not something that made sense to me easily, but I loved to write. I loved to research. I loved history. I loved literature. He thinks it's all really like the most boring thing ever, right, dear?
I had one class in high school for U.S. history. That was really good, great class.
The right teacher can make all the difference.
Exactly. A great history class. That's the U.S. history class in high school I really enjoyed. But other than that,
I had one science class that I liked. It was through my homeschool co-op. I think it was 8th grade. I don't know. I remember we studied the layers of the earth and some stuff like that. And the professor was a homeschool dad, and he was great. He would always say, there are no stupid questions because you're here because you don't know things. And that was like such a relief to me because I knew that any question I had was probably going to be stupid because I I really didn't know much about that subject. And I didn't do excellent in that class, but I did better in that class than I did in any of the others. So thank you, Mr. Gannon. That was the best science class of my educational career. But yeah, so my parents knew that I wasn't great at math and science. I knew I wasn't great at math and science. And so it was pretty obvious I should go into a major that fell into my strengths. Now, oddly enough, I did still end up working in math. So to say, I worked at a bank in college, and then that just kind of naturally transitioned into some other financial jobs. But I had enough math to do that. And I also wrote a lot of letters in that job, and I got a lot of compliments on how well my letters were written. So it wasn't my dream job by any means.
Yeah.
But when I did get to write a policy manual or something, I was really happy to do it. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And he's going, what? Huh? No, that sounds awful.
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
Do you feel like college was a shock? Because I've heard this argument before that homeschoolers are going to have this, say you do have this wonderful homeschool experience, but then you're going to go to a public college and they're going to be like just shocked by the harshness of the real world, and they're going to crumble and not be able to hold up to it. Interestingly, I was a homeschool grad. I went to a public college. You were a public school grad. You went to a Bible college. How was the adjustment rough for you? How was the adjustment rough for me? I'll start with, I remember going to public college and sitting on a park bench in the main area and just sitting there listening to some of the other students talk, and I was amazed at how much they swore. That was really just shocking to me. I knew swear words. I knew cursing. I was not going, oh, I've never heard a bad word before. It wasn't like that. I was just amazed at how illiterate they sound.
And lack of vocabulary, really.
Well, yeah, just even if you were to structure that sentence with that many curse words, that's not even where the curse words should go in the sentence. You're using those incorrectly. As a literature, writing person, I was just really annoyed to hear the curse words being used just so poorly within the sentences. I didn't enjoy hearing them at all, but I remember being really shocked by how much people swore, and I remember being really shocked by how many teens were smoking. I really was shocked by the amount of cigarettes and smoking, because I had been in public school up through 4th grade, and we had constant coloring papers and school assemblies about the dangers of cigarette smoke and even secondhand smoke, and how you needed to go home and tell your parents not to smoke in the house, and just different things like that, which nobody in my family smoked. But I was just really surprised. I was like, well, we had school assemblies that told us this wasn't healthy. Why are these people doing this? Yeah. I didn't understand that it was cool. Also, I had spent my teen years
Which is not a bad thing.
No, it wasn't. I just was like, what? Why are they all doing this? Don't they know this is dangerous? Why would you do something that's dangerous? And that's just my personality too. I'm also a very safety-focused person.
Yeah, justice and
which comes in handy as a mom. But I was just really surprised how many people smoked. So really, the smoking and the swearing, again, sad how quickly you adjust to that, and your ears almost kind of start to tune it out. So it wasn't like I came home and was crying because I couldn't handle it. It was just like, wow, I didn't think young people smoked. I always thought that was the older generation who didn't know when they were, when they first started smoking, that it was unhealthy and then had this addiction that they couldn't kick. I didn't know that young people who knew it was unhealthy from the start would start smoking. So I guess that was pretty naive of me.
And for me, going off to college, I think the thing that I struggled with the most was the study skills thing. As far as, of course, I just wasn't I was a smart kid in school, so I didn't really have to study too much. I studied some, but I didn't really I wasn't forced to acquire study skills of any kind. I just did well enough to get along, and that's all I wanted to do. When I got to college, I did the same thing, and it started to just kind of fall apart, realizing that I need to study for this, or I need to prepare for this in advance and map out my stuff. And you helped me with that when I went back to college and finished up, is mapping out my syllabus and my schedule and my calendar and all that stuff. I was like, why didn't anybody ever teach me this kind of stuff? It could have been useful for me to understand just general study skills, time management type stuff, and planning things out. Take this and do this with it, and organize your time and your reading and your projects.
Yeah, you definitely were able to acquire that skill. I just think somehow it was never focused on in your education.
I had the foundations of worldview on how to do things and how to stick to my
You had a good work ethic.
My work ethic
Yeah.
and foundational stuff like that. But at the same time, I was just like, I'll figure it out as I go. And I did, and I was able to do it, but it was a struggle.
Our different personalities just kind of come into this. You're more laid back, go with the flow, it'll all work out somehow kind of
Just
person.
smart enough to get along. I didn't really have to learn.
You're very smart.
I didn't have to learn study skills in a way. I should have. I wish I would have, but I didn't really have to.
But I think being homeschooled and my parents, I was the oldest, and by the time I hit my teen years, which was only in a few years into our homeschool experience, it was very much my mother kind of supervising my work and making sure I had, completed certain portions of work. And we also had a homeschool co-op that we went to once a week where I was accountable to other teachers in certain subjects, and I had papers and speeches and tests that I had to do there, and I had somebody I had to answer to. So that whole here's your class, now go home and do the studying on your own and come back in a few days or a week and there's going to be a test or whatever. That was already how I was used to learning. So I've had people say things to me like, oh, well, if you homeschool your kids, they're just going to be so overwhelmed when they go out into the real world. And that was not my experience. I really, sure, there were some things I was surprised by, but not anything that was debilitating or just rocked my world. Now, I will say that even when we were first married, I would sometimes come home from work or watching a TV show and I would have to say, is that a bad word? Because I wasn't sure. And he would just shake his head and go,
what does that phrase mean?
Go, oh, little homeschooler, you.
Yeah, there's a couple innuendos about things.
Yes, innuendos would just whoo, right over my head.
What are they talking about when they say this phrase? It's yeah, you don't want to say
I
that.
embarrassed myself really bad at work one time. The lady who worked in the cubicle across from me, who was not a nice lady, didn't speak well of people, because I didn't realize what she was saying. I very loudly said, "What's fill in the blank?" And she was like, shh. Shushing me. I don't know what that word means. To which she looked at me like I was the stupidest person she'd ever seen, and I felt really stupid too at that moment. Mm-hmm. But you know what? It was still worth being homeschooled, because I'm not sorry that I did not know how to call people names.
Exactly. Why would you need to know that? That's not something you should have learned
No, I'm
anyway.
glad I didn't know that. I mean, I know it now. I'll never forget, because I definitely wanted to crawl back into my little cubicle and hide, because she looked at me like I was the stupid.
That's pretty common. Even I've experienced that from time to time throughout my history. I remember just a few years back, I asked coworkers, what does that mean? And they had to explain a term, a common slang.
Oh yeah, because nowadays
okay,
it's all, and I'm sure it's always been like this through history, but
sure,
the slang just changes so fast, and now we're starting to hit middle age, and pretty soon we're going to be asking our kids what things mean.
We all have embarrassing situations. Homeschooled, public schooled, it's all the same.
I feel like some of my embarrassing situations may have been unique to me because of my homeschooled background, because I was innocent on a couple of topics that the rest of my peer group was not. But I don't feel like I had more embarrassing experiences or a harder time transitioning to adulthood because I was homeschooled.
Regardless if you're homeschooled, public schooled, or private schooled, or whatever school you go to and whatever you do, you'll still go through the school of hard knocks as far as learning what's right and what's wrong, as far as social interaction and terms you don't know, or innuendos and popular culture stuff.
That happens. I mean, oh goodness, our kids say some funny things sometimes too. So, yeah.
Yep, I'd rather be here to answer their questions.
Yes, and that's a good truth too, because ultimately we're all going to learn the things we need to learn, good, bad, and otherwise. And who do you want to have introducing that topic to them?
And me knowing that I was a shy kid who wouldn't ask questions. If I had a question at school about something like a term that I'd never heard of before, I'd be like, what does that mean? I wouldn't say it to anyone. I would come home, and I probably wouldn't even ask my parents, because I would have forgotten by then. Because I was just kind of...
You did not sweat the small stuff.
One of our kids has a question, one of our kids has a look on their face, you're like, you don't understand what I'm saying, do you?
Yeah, you can just tell.
You can tell. And
it's just written all over their face.
And if you know them, that they're shy, or they're not going to ask you the question, you can say, do you know what that means? And they can say...
The question book that our one child has.
Yes, asking questions that
precious.
She has a notebook that she takes to bed, and if she has a question,
she gets deep thoughts at night.
Yeah, everybody does. Everybody gets those.
But deep thoughts for a kid, which
Yeah.
is really.
So she writes them down, and then we go out, and she'll ask me questions.
They had a daddy-daughter date and went through her question book,
Yeah,
and
good.
It just made me laugh. Again, this is our child that I'm like, you two share the same brain, because the questions were things like, why do we have boogies?
Why do we have fingernails?
Why are flowers pretty? Things that, like, that's just not how my brain works. I would have never thought to ask those questions, but they were really interesting, and I'm glad she didn't ask that question in a class and get laughed at because it sounded silly. And again, not that you can't do that if your kids are in school too. You can. But it's really about being really intentional in parenting your kids and making sure that they're okay, that their questions are being answered.
Yeah, it just goes along with, it just goes hand in hand with parenting. Parenting is teaching your kids how to be good adults, really. Our job is to work our way out of a job.
Yeah.
To teach them how to be productive, useful adults who are good people.
Yeah, and I think homeschooling really just gives you more opportunities to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're not having to, of course, if they're getting taught something that is not positive at school, either from classes or from just their peer group, you're not having to counteract that at home. But as a homeschooling family, you take it to that next level where you have so much more time to sit down and work with your child, and you can answer the questions that they have come up in math and science and literature, and reading a book aloud together as a family, as well as the things that the rest of the world gets to experience with their kids during the rest of the time too. So I feel like homeschooling really just gives you more time to parent your kids, which can be exhausting, but at the end of the day it can be really positive too.
Yeah.
So as a public school grad, you're very much on board with homeschooling.
Yeah, I can see a lot of the pros for having a homeschool education. And also, it comes down to I trust you, to understand what our kids need. First of all, you're very good at evaluating what our kids.
I'm an overthinker.
You're an overthinker. Yeah, that's true. And you're good at analyzing personalities too, and seeing some strengths and weaknesses right off the bat.
Yeah, but so are you, because sometimes when I take something too seriously, like, oh, they're not understanding this, I'm totally stressed, they're never going to learn it, and he's like, they're going to learn it. They're learning it at a different pace. Just give them time. Yeah, so it takes some trust. It's a good balance between having someone stay home, whether it's the husband or the wife. Yeah, there are some homeschool dads out there. But someone staying home with the kids, and then the parents kind of conferencing, parent-teacher conference, keeping things on the same level and understanding what your kids need, and being able to incorporate that into school and into life all seamlessly together in a way. It's good. Yeah. It's good. It's exhausting to have all that extra time with your kids. Yeah. But once you really embrace it, it's just a really good experience. I'm very thankful that we get to do this. Mm-hmm. Me too. Yeah. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe, you can check out our website, which is there to help you find all the best curriculum for your family and provide you with the resources to use it successfully. You can find all of that at thehomeschoolsearch.com. We hope to see you again soon. Let us know what you thought of this video. If you were a homeschool grad, if you were a public school grad, what your concerns are for your own children, let us know in the comments, and we'll try and answer some of those questions if we can. So thanks so much. Bye. Bye.